I'm from the Quebec Coalition on Weight-Related Problem, and we're really concerned about all this pressure coming from advertising to children, because it clearly contributes to obesity. And we are sponsored by the Public Health Association of Quebec, and we have more than 100 partners supporting us in advocating in different sectors. As food industry, of course, we're really active about all the food marketing things, and also about built environment and sociocultural aspect, like clearly advertising and body image and things like this. So, why are we concerned about all this marketing to children aspect? Is that because, of course, when kids are in front of the screen, they're not moving at all. For example, average children spend 2 hours a day during weekdays in front of a TV screen, and 4 hours a day during weekends. So during that time, they're exposed to a lot of food marketing, and they're not moving, so it's quite concerning. And teenagers are not, they spend a lot of hours also in front of their computers. So it's 20 hours in front of TV screens and 10 hours in front of computer screens. And that's why we just finished a summit on obesity recently. And during that summit, we took, this opportunity to make a meeting with some advocates, researchers, policymakers, to see how we can go farther and prevent obesity in Quebec. And this meeting was called Consensus for Change. And we identify a top 3 action for a policymaker. And the first one is about marketing to children. And we were talking about should we ban totally advertising to children, as it is the situation in Quebec, or if we only limit, unhealthy marketing to children. And also we had this discussion about from what age are we banning or restricting advertising to children. And clearly we had a consensus, and we're trying to get some policy implemented to ban advertising to children under 16. Because you'll see if you attend the event tomorrow, but Marion Saucet, who's also from the Quebec Coalition, will present you how particularly the beverage industry is pretty active and pretty aggressive, with all the sponsoring of extreme sport, and they clearly target the teenager segment. So kids are exposed to 40,000 ads per year, and they're vulnerable. And it's funny, I'm going to take the Dr. Tom Warshawski image, because he said, okay, if a kid of 8 years old believe in Easter Bunny, he will believe that when he opens a can of pop, he gets happiness. So we need to protect children because they're not able to distinguish information and promotion. Maybe there is some parents in the room, and I'm sure that your kids came to you and say, oh, we have to buy that product because that will change our life. It happens in my house, so I guess it's the same for you. So we need to protect them of it. And we talked before about the impact of screen exposure to children. Of course, in Quebec, the people overweight and obese are less than in other provinces. But we also have some information or evidence saying that children exposed to more than 2 hours per day in front of TV are twice as likely to become overweight or obese, for different reasons, of course. Let's see, Jean-Philippe Laperrière, who's a researcher from Montreal, look at the different food advertising, and of course there is 3 unhealthy food ad for only 1 healthy. And that brings me to all these debates around we should restrict advertising of unhealthy food, or we should totally ban advertising to children. But, you know, there is not much healthy food advertising, actually. And we were talking during the break and saying that, what about Nintendo? Because it's true, advertising to children is banned in Quebec. But if we ban, for example, across Canada, advertising of unhealthy food, they will still be able to promote, you know, Nintendo DS, which keeps, you know, children in front of a screen. So we don't know exactly what should be the best, but on my point of view, I would suggest to have a total ban of advertising to children, of course. And as I mentioned before to my colleagues at Consensus, if you want the total pie, ask for it. Don't ask only for a piece. So I will suggest to everyone advocating on that matter to request a total ban of advertising to children. And maybe you will have to negotiate, but at least you'll have something. So there is also some evidence relating the time spent in front of TV and consumption of calories, which is evaluated to 167 calories. And of course, they're not usually kids and other people are not eating apples in front of their TV screens. So it's mostly junk food or high nutrient food. The WHO recently made a report, and they identify marketing to children of unhealthy food as a priority in their chronic disease prevention strategy. So they make an evidence report, they read all the literature, and they identify it as the one having the most impact. So it's a strong support coming from the WHO asking for a ban on advertising of unhealthy food. We talked before about all the brand recognition, because even if kids in Quebec are not exposed to a kids-oriented message, they're still exposed to the brand. And there is some values or attribute linked to that brand. So, of course, one of the top, I would say, is McDonald's, which is recognized by children between 3 and 5. So at 93%, they don't know how to read, but they're able to recognize a McDonald's brand. And of course, they're pretty early in life, they have some values attributed to that brand. For example, there is some researcher who present French fries in a McDonald's packaging, and another one, the same French fries in on brand packaging. And of course, children prefer the one in the McDonald's brand packaging. But it's the same product, so they're already influenced as in an early age to the brand values. Let's talk about in the situation in Quebec. Some of my colleagues already did, but I'll try to complete. So 30 years ago, we adopted a law in Quebec, but since then, we didn't get any surveillance, monitoring, and everything. But there is 2 articles, saying that we have to encadrer, enrolling? Frame, of course. So framing, the restriction in Quebec. And they consider, of course, what's the product, when is it present, and also how is it present. Are we using, for example, appealing music to present the product? Are we using characters like the one Tony the Tiger or other one? And also the time, but we have some challenges with the time, and I'll show you, because 30 years ago, the media consumption habits were not the same as the one now. We have more and more TV channels and kids channels. They didn't exist at all 30 years ago. So this is how we consider advertising to kids in Quebec. So first, we're taking into account, do we have 15% of children in front of the screen? And is the product directly to children? So in that case, it is authorized to, if we have less, than 15. So there is some I won't explain it to you, but it's on our website if you want to get some more information. And we recently translate everything from French to English. So, and we also have online the report made by Option Consommateur, so you can go and upload the report on our website. So some people in the other provinces are looking at Quebec and say, oh, you're the gold standard, and that's fabulous, and we really envy you. But there is some lesson learned from the Quebec model. And I will give you some advice if you want to have something implemented in your province or at the federal level. You have to take into account some aspect of. But first, as I mentioned before, they're using a lot of method, to reach children or teenagers. So Facebook is a good example because they're pretty active on those social media. And all the sponsoring, it's hard to define, is it targeting directly children, but they're attending those events, and but how we can demonstrate that they constitute more than, for example, 15% of the audience. Also in Quebec, there is some exclusion. Of course, the packaging is excluded, but it's quite powerful. Again, I'm talking to parents in the room, and I'm sure that when you go to the grocery store, some boxes are jumping in the cart because there is some attractive characters on those boxes. So, and it works, for the marketing people. But it's excluded in Quebec, as same as billboards and other things like this. I talked to you before about the listening period, showing you how it's not adapted to our reality. And it's really interesting because Monique made the research until midnight, correct? So, but in Quebec, actually, if you want to make a complaint to the Office de la Protection du Consommateur, who's the regulatory body in charge of applying the law, you can't make a complaint, for example, on weekdays after 6, because it's not under the regulation. So it's, for example, it's banned to be, you can't advertise to children between 7 and 8:30 on morning weekdays. But between 8:30 and 9, that's fine. So but of course, this schedule has been adopted, during 30 years ago. So when I was coming back from school, we had some cartoons on CBC, but we didn't have any Disney Network and YTV and Teletoon as the one, actually on air at those 24 hours a day. You can watch cartoons at 3 o'clock in the morning, actually. So it's clearly not that. So I wouldn't suggest to have those scheduled in a new regulation. Also, all the investigation process is quite demanding because, as Monique mentioned before, the Office de la Protection du Consommateur is not in front of the screen and looking at all the ads present on TV, on internet. So the coalition decided to make that surveillance. And what we're doing is making complaints to the Office de la Protection du Consommateur, forcing them to investigate. So we had the first plea of guilty coming from McDonald's, Burger King, Lucky Charms, but we got some failure, for example, with that chaotic. So it's an energy drinks, and it's sold in toy stores in Quebec. But it's not anymore because Health Canada react, but it was sold, you know, between a doll and a game. And you open the little thing here, and you have a code. And with that code, you can play on internet. It's an advert games. Of course, when we saw that, we were really exhausted. And also, there is some card associated, because it's a quite popular TV show, chaotic, watched by mostly guys, little boys, you know, and the target audience is around 8 years old. And there is some card associated to that TV show, and kids in school, they're exchanging those cards like the hockey game cards. So we made a complaint, and finally, the Office de la Protection du Consommateur was not able to pursue chaotic. Why? Because we bought that can, and we didn't respect, you know, the legal way of best practices. So we should have it in the bag, you know, sell, having that as a proof, you know, legal proof. But we're an NGO. We're not, you know, lawyers, and we don't have a bunch of lawyers behind. So they reject our complaints about it because it wasn't, you know, legal. Sorry? No? Okay. So I'm talking about surveillance, of course, but we got some good success. The Igor is a little snack, and that they launched a product in kindergarten in Quebec. So they called in kindergarten saying, would you like to take part to our healthy program and blah, blah, blah. So people say, oh yeah, because they don't have a lot of resource. And finally they receive a box, but that box was full of cakes, savings, and a little video, music, and everything about that characters create to sell that brand. And finally, they got the first plea of guilty of the story, and we, not much, they got $44,000 fines, but at least they got a big press coverage. And we know the value of a brand and of a reputation for a company. So the Weight Coalition, you know, really have been really active on media to make sure that it was well known, but mostly that they will, other company wouldn't do the same, okay, because we're taking them as an example. The same thing with Burger King. They gave some toys with their Happy Meals, I will say, but it wasn't the toys the problem. It was, you know, the little promotion sheet saying, come back next week, you'll get another one. So they pled guilty also. McDonald's, they present a TV, it was a movie during Christmas time, and it's quite popular. It's called Ciné Cadeau. And they sponsored the TV show, and we saw a Christmas tree. And the camera was coming from the, you know, the beginning of the tree and going up. And at the end, instead of the star, we were able to say the ham. And of course, they took this opportunity to present an advertising of McNuggets. So they also pled guilty for that. And some people were telling us, you know, this law has been adopted 30 years ago. The web, you know, we didn't expect to have any website or anything. So we said, okay, let's try to make a complaint with an advert game to see exactly if, you know, the law applies. But the law applies because Lucky Charm also pled guilty. So we now know that the definition or the way the article has been written in the law is quite, you know, we can adapt it to many media. And that's funny because when we made some press relation about this website on Friday. It was a Friday afternoon. And on Monday, we went back on other sweet cereals website. And now we were able to see, you know, in the welcome page asking, are you from Quebec? How old are you? And if, for example, I'm from Quebec and I'm 10 years old, the children were not able to access the website. So they quickly changed their practice. So we were really proud of it because, okay, you know, it has some impact when we made some complaints to the Office de la Protection du Consommateur, but mostly when we make press relation about it. And some said, oh, Mom, they changed, you know, because on Friday it was clearly targeting the children. But on Monday morning it was, oh, Mom, you're concerned about the health of your children? So they really changed the target audience for that. And there is a clear support of that law. It's 9 out of 10 Quebecers. And there is also some support to have, you know, more severe cause. Same as in Canada, so there is strong support. We know that it's a condition for having, you know, policy change in all legislatures. So having that support make us confident that we can go farther with that. We also asked to Option Consommateur to make a report about what we should change as a law in Canada to have something like the one in Quebec. So we have it on our website. And we already talked about self-regulation. Yeah. So we can act at the federal level or at the provincial level to have a law adopt banning advertising to children. So François presents you the federal level option. I'm now presenting you the provincial level option. So we asked to a lawyer to identify, you know, in each provinces in Canada, which law we should amend to get the same, you know, protection as the one in Quebec. So we have all the information, and I'll be pleased to share it with you. So maybe for ending, I will suggest you to, if you have, you know, you succeed in having a law adopt, make sure that you have surveillance resources, because that's good to have a law. But if nobody watch, it doesn't care. It doesn't do anything. Here is our website. And we also have some posters about evidence on marketing to children at the end, just in the back of the room. And I'll be happy to answer your question. Thank you.